Welcome to the Choir Conductor podcast. Each episode features a conversation with people in the choir or music education profession. I am your host, Zach Thompson. Let's start the show. Hello and welcome to the Choir Conductor podcast. We are at the Florida Music Educators Association Conference here in Tampa. And my guest today is Sabra Hatley. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
You're very welcome. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, so let's start by having you talk about your musical upbringing.
I was born and raised in Georgia, and back in those times, church choirs were very large, and we had a very strong adult choir all down through elementary choir in church. And then at school, mainly I started a private school when I was 5th grade, and I went all the way through that school in 12th grade. But when I entered the middle school, I was in chorus, and I had the same director off from middle school through high school. He was very good. He was very strong, and he really gave me my background in music and strong foundation in music, so that when I went on, to music theory and things like that, I knew some things. I didn't know all things, but I had a good foundation there. So I had a very strong upbringing in music.
Yeah, and was there a point that you knew or decided that you wanted to kind of dedicate your life to music?
Well, when I was growing up and you were going off to college, the music world, as far as getting your degree, was not as advanced as it is now. Meaning, you either went vocal performance or you were a music educator. And then at that time growing up, I thought, I love music, and it might be something I want to do, but I know I don't want to sing at opera, and I definitely don't want to teach, was my mentality. So it was kind of something on the back burner. And oddly, when I went to Auburn University, I went there for the School of Nursing. I wanted to be a nurse, and that was something that I had always enjoyed growing up, science and biology and that kind of stuff. And I finished my freshman year, and it was in that springtime when I was taking one of my many chemistry classes. I sat down to do some homework, and I just looked at the book, and I thought, I hate this. And this is one of the many that I have to take, and this may not be what I'm supposed to do. So I prayed about it, and I talked to my parents, and I decided that, the only other thing I know to do is music. And so I changed my degree into music education, and I haven't looked back since.
Wow, yeah, I hear that story a lot. People either kind of backing into education and then realizing that they love it and they stick with it for the rest of their life, or similar to my wife's case, she was going to be pre-vet, and then she just figured out that that's not what she wanted to do. And
that's funny, because my husband was pre-vet.
Oh, yeah.
And went into music education, so that's cool.
Yeah, so I think that, that happens, I think, more often than some people realize. But it is good to know that, you are not a failure for doing that.
Correct.
It's a learning moment.
Correct.
And it's something that you can then tell your students, hey, even if you don't make the decision right away, that doesn't mean that your life is over.
Right, and I have been telling them that. I have an intern this semester from Florida Southern College, and I've allowed her to share some of her story and the opportunities that she has had because she has gone into music. But I've also shared with the students that in telling them that they can sing in college and not have to major in music, that many colleges, apart from some of the big ones, will offer them money just to sing. And so I've been stressing that to my students, and then also letting them know that, you don't have to be a music major. That's not my job, is to make you a music major. But it is to allow you to continue, and then you could possibly get money for this. But also, when you're going, on a side note, you may change your mind about what you want to major in once you get there, and that's okay. You want to do what you're passionate about. You don't want it to just be a job.
Right, and also depending on where you are, often there's several churches in the area that are looking to supplement their choirs and are willing to pay good
Yes, they
singers.
are.
And that's how I got food in grad school,
Yes,
basically.
that's right. That's right.
So it's, you never know like where that's going to take you. And so often, for whatever reason, students just stop at their senior year. And I don't know if it's just going to a university and they think, oh, I'm done. But it gets better in college. It's like,
right, it does.
more fun. It's
right.
But I don't know how to get or communicate that with students because it's just such a big change.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard. So let's have you talk about where you are currently teaching, kind of the choir program there, and anything else you do in that community.
Okay. I teach at Winter Haven High School. I left a former school after staying there for 15 years, decided it was a change. So I entered Winter Haven High School, and the programs there had a really good foundation, and I actually took my husband's position, so there's an interesting background about that. So he had really, he was actually hired as an itinerant, and he had 3 schools, and 2 of them were middle schools that were Winter Haven High School's feeder. And so he was also at Winter Haven High School. So in 3 years, the goal was for him to build them up strong enough that then he could choose which one he wanted to stay at full time. Well, he did that in 3 years, and he stayed at Winter Haven. So he had laid that foundation for the program that is there now. And because the kids knew me, it made my life a little bit easier to just step into that space and not have to go through some of the first year things that you have to go to when you start a new school. So that made that transition much easier. So laying that foundation, I have a men's chorus, and all my men go into that choir, whether they're 9th grade, whether they're advanced, it doesn't matter. I separate the men and put them in there because I feel like they need that camaraderie with other boys, and they need the chance to be boys. I have a beginning chorus, and honestly, most of my middle school kids, even if they've come from a very strong middle school program, I really put them in there unless I know them or have some kind of way that I can move them into my advance. But because I don't know them, I don't know their personality, and I don't know some of their characteristics, I really like to kind of hold them there. A few of them I will move up to my advanced women, but that's what I generally have. Then I have my Sapphire Serenade. They are my advanced women's chorus. And then I have Bella Voce, which is my top ensemble of women, and it stays small so that we can do ensemble work. And then I combine my men and my Bella Voce and do concert choir. And for MPA and things like that, those have to be done after school because there's not room in the schedule. And then I have a show choir that meets 1 day a week for 2 hours on Wednesday afternoons.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. And what's the time schedule for your school?
We are in school from 7:07 till 2.
Wow.
And but in my day, I teach, we're on a modified block. On Mondays, we see all of our groups. So we have 7 periods.
Okay.
So inside my time frame, I have, we teach 6 because of planning. So I have 4 choirs that meet during the day, and I have 2 piano classes that meet during the day. So then that pushes show choir after school, and then when we do concert choir, we don't do concert choir every week. That is only for designated MPA times where we learn our music separately, and then we combine for like 3 rehearsals to get ready.
Right. Yeah. And well, yeah, because you end really early, so at 2:00, and then that you can do after school things like that. And whereas like other schools, like mine ends 3:15, other schools end almost closer to 4. Then you're pushing into stuff that you can't do that.
You can't do that. So, and I'm not the type of person that I don't have rehearsals just for the sake of having rehearsals, because I try to let the kids know, I have a life and it's not always here at school, and I want them to have a life too. So when we rehearse, I do my best to, get in and let's get it done, and let's be purposeful. I don't just rehearse just for the sake of rehearsing,
Right. And there are, there's tremendous benefits from having the, tenors and basses separate from the sopranos and altos.
Yes.
Not only does it save you time because
Yes.
you have to, teach half the parts, but then you can get into specific, like vocal mechanisms for the men versus the women. Can
Exactly.
you talk about some of the, the strengths and maybe some of the downside, if there is any, to doing that?
I didn't do that for a long time, and then I had a colleague that said, you need to separate them. That's what I do. I separate them. And I'm like, so how do you put it together? And he goes, you just put it together. I said, okay. So I, being a female, have to learn how to work with boys. The pluses in that are they build camaraderie with each other. They're able to be boys, not in a room full of girls. They act a little differently when they're by themselves as when they are with a mixture of girls. And then they help each other. Like when some of those are, my ninth graders are, their voices are changing and all that kind of stuff. You've got your older ones that can help them through that. Sometimes my fault is I will sing along with them sometimes, and the boys will try to match. Some of them can differentiate that in their ear, but some of them will try to match me where I am. So they'll be way up in their falsetto or something to match my pitch, and I'm like, I have to step back and go, stop singing. Let them listen to each other and do it with each other. I like it. And my boys meet at 7 a.m. They are the first thing. And you would think that they are dead and lifeless. And they're not. And they actually keep me from being dead and lifeless. They get me going kind of in the morning and, they're ready to sing. So it's a lot of fun. They're goofy at times, But I really don't have any downsides in that. It's just when you pull it together and they have to sing together with the women, you got to work out the balance, and they need that time to gel and listen to the girls, and the girls need to go, oh, there's men with us now. We need to fix this sound. But it works, and it has only helped me. It has not hurt me at all.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, the more I'm in my third year at this school, so as I keep going, the more I keep thinking about, keep separating more and more. And so next year I am going to separate, definitely at least for the beginning stages. So a men's choir and a women's choir, rather than having a beginning concert choir, just because it's just you just need it to do that. And then for the advanced ensembles, then they can come together. But
yes, that's totally fine. And my goal is to build back up the boys. Right now we're only at 12. They're very strong 12. So because of that, they still go to solo and ensemble, and they compete as an ensemble. So last year they did that, and at state they got superior with distinction. So they were just pumped, and so I want to build that number up, but it's going to take time. When Mr. Hatley had left, he had a lot of men that graduated, and they were very strong. So we're in that mode of trying to build that back up. But it has really just worked positive for me.
Yeah, so, obviously that you get superior with distinction, solo and ensemble. That's great. And so do all of your choirs or groups end up going to some kind of MPA or solo and ensemble, or do you pick and choose each year, I guess?
I will take, for solo and ensemble, I take the men, and then I take that top women's ensemble, Bella Voce, and then my show choir.
Okay.
And then individual students, they have to do some solo and ensemble because they're honors credit, or, they have to do something separate in that. For example, my Bella Voce, that's my top women's ensemble. That is invitation only. And the disclaimer is for those girls, they have to audition for All-State. They have to audition for All-County. They have to do solo and ensemble in some form or fashion, either as a solo or duet, as an ensemble, as a smaller ensemble, And I really push for them to do solos because ensembles, when they have to meet on their own, it's very difficult. There are just a lot of issues there. So I really push for them to do solos because I think they get more out of that when they do. Then for MPA, I think my beginners need to go because they need to be put inside that realm of this is what we do. They need to hear some of the other groups, and for some of them, they need to go, oh, we really need to step up the game plan. And then I take my advanced women chorus, which is Sapphire Serenade. So I know I will take those two to MPA. And then I'm planning on taking Bella Voce and men as concert choir to MPA.
Yeah, I'm so glad that I do this podcast because every single guest I talk to, I take something huge away. And what you just told me, I didn't even think about that, to have like requirements for your top ensemble. Look, if you want to really be in this top ensemble, you are auditioning for Allstate. Right. You are going to do a solo and ensemble. And do you hold anything against it? How do you, like, what if they get into the ensemble and they're like, nope, not doing it? Or has that happened?
It's a grade.
Oh, but okay, yeah.
It's a grade.
That works.
And one student in particular did not show up for her all-county audition. And I had asked Miss Cummings, actually, I said, I need a roster, please, of any DNAs on my end because this is a grade for them. And so she shared that with me immediately. And so, I put in a 0 for that student with no opportunity to make it up.
Yes.
Because this was on the contract. This was the disclaimer. Now, I am thinking about next year for Allstate so that they make sure that they're taking the test seriously. Not that they didn't, but to make some of them try a little bit harder, I think. I know I have another colleague that the score on their test went into the grade book.
Oh.
So, I don't know. I'm thinking about that.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I guess it's a balancing act of, do you want to add a little bit extra stress to them to take the test, or will it get them to actually, put in the extra hours and practice?
Sure.
But
sure.
Yeah.
And I think you have to judge that by your climate of your kids and the climate of your schools. If your school is very academic driven, which they all need to be, but if you've got students that are academically driven, they're not gonna want to do bad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm gonna kind of have to feel that out and just kind of see, or maybe it's the fact that I look at those that if they pull a no-show or something like that, well, then they're not in it the next year. They'll finish out my year because my school won't let me take them out of the program in the middle of the year because there's nowhere else to put them. But in that top ensemble, they won't be there the next year.
I mean, and just beyond just the music, it's teaching, responsibility, dedication, and consequences.
Yeah.
Which, as shame to say, is slowly going away in our education system just for a variety of reasons. But it's good that they can and will experience that because they're going to when they leave high school in some way, shape, or form. So why not get them prepared now? Yeah. That's great. I'm definitely going to think a lot about that, and I might start doing that. That's amazing. So, what advice would you give your younger self?
I'm sorry, say that again.
What advice would you give your younger self? So, 20-year-old Sabra, 25-year-old Sabra.
Wow. In my career, or
it can be anything. Life, career, hobbies.
Let's see. There are some things I would like to do over. There's some things I don't want to do over. I would think to make sure that you enjoy what you're doing. Even backing up to college, making sure, and I did. I had a blast in college. But just making sure that you find that joy in everything. Get out there. Take those leaps and do stuff that you might be a little bit afraid to do, but go ahead and take the leap because you may never be able to do that later. Take advantage of your time now while you're young and do those things while you can and while you've got the freedom to do them.
Sure. Yeah, that's great advice. Do you have a favorite book? Or maybe series?
I do. And it's nothing related to music.
That's okay.
One of my favorite books is called The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. And it is about her family. Her mother had died very young, and it was she and her sister Betsy and her father, and they owned a watch and clock shop in Holland. And she grew up during World War II. And her family were Christians, and they had a place built in their clock shop to help hide Jews.
Oh, wow.
And actually, the Nazis found them. And the whole series of the book is about her time at Auschwitz and her sister. They were separated from their father. And you know, it's difficult to read, but she just tells the story about what their life was like and about the hope that even in all that, the hope that they had and how God used that in their lives and in the people's lives around them. And she was finally released. Her sister actually died while they were in prison. And she was actually released, and she spent her time afterwards going around and talking about forgiveness and the power of forgiveness. And in one of her closing chapters, she talks about she was sharing her story and talking about forgiveness, and a man stood up and he called her by her numerical number.
Oh, wow.
And he was one of her guards. And she said she was just face to face with having to put that forgiveness really into practice. Not that she hadn't, but this one was a little bit different. This was a guard that had been there that was not nice to them, you know, and she said it really took her back, but it hit her, you know, and she had to extend that forgiveness to him. So it's a very powerful book.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it just because when she was captured, one of the nurses, when they would take them in and evaluate them, whether they were going to keep them or whether they were going to kill them, if they were healthy enough, they would keep them. Her nurse asked her, she said, "I'm very sorry, what can I get you? Is there anything I can get you?" And Corrie named 3 things, but I can't remember the third one. But the first thing was a toothbrush. And the second thing was a Bible. And the third thing, I'm sorry, I can't remember, and I need to go back and read. And so the nurse said, "Okay, I'll see what I can do." And so she went, and she came back. She said, "I found a toothbrush." And she said, "But I don't have a whole Bible. I just have a little bit of, I found like the book of John, I think it was, just little."
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "That's okay. I'll take it." And every night in their bunks, with 400 people crammed into their bunks, she and her sister would take out the Bible and they would read passages. She also had a little vial of oil that was a vitamin. And the whole time they were in that camp, they would give each person a drop of oil, and that oil never ran out.
Wow.
You know, just a lot of things. And so the people were, she said, she talked about one instance where, you know, it was their nighttime and they were about to go to bed, the little sleep that they were able to get. And she said everybody was like waiting in expectation because of the hope that they were finding in the Word of God. And it was silent. And just, you know, using God's Word to bring them hope through such a difficult time.
Wow. Yeah, that's
great
great.
book.
Yeah. So kind of to wrap things up, I know it's early January, but you know, often choir directors have to think far in advance. So can you tell me a little bit of your upcoming programming for your choirs for this semester?
Okay. Right now we are my solo and ensemble students, we are hounding out solo and ensemble. They actually chose their music back last term, but now they've got to really start bringing that up front. So in my Bella Voce, my top women's ensemble, I will give them class time to work on their stuff, and I will help them. But they have to use that time. They were supposed to look up recordings on their own. I don't teach their notes or anything, so they should have that, down. Working on sight reading, just getting back into the groove of building those skills and getting ready that we're making sure we're all together and we're pulsing and we're drilling our intervals. And one thing new for me is I changed this year. I was raised on sight reading on numbers.
Oh, yeah.
And that worked very well for me. I was a math kid, so that just clicked. That opened up that door. And when I taught at my previous school, I had asked them, because I was just in fear that I was going to have to go to solfege, and I was like, I don't know that well. And so when I asked my kids there, I said, what do you sight read on? And they said numbers. I was like, whew, thank you. So we stayed on numbers. And I had started, knowing that I was leaving, I started transitioning them to solfege. And they were kind of looking at me like, why are you doing this to us? But I said, you just need to trust me on this. Well, when I got to Winter Haven, we were doing everything on numbers, but we kept missing an interval and a drill. And I was like, why are we missing that? And I said, do it on solfege. And I did it as an experiment because I had my boys first, and they got to that interval and they nailed it. And I looked at them and they looked at me and they went, oh, rats, because they knew she's going to change us.
Yeah.
And I said, look, I'm learning too. So I have transitioned everybody into sight reading on solfege.
Yeah.
So, so we're drilling that. And they're getting used to it because we just do it every day. We do drills from Dr. Kruger's sight reading series. So a lot of little interval stuff that they're doing on solfege. So they're pretty secure in that.
I like solfege, for a couple reasons, but some students just aren't mathematically brained, or they just don't like to do numbers. And then especially if you try to get them to sight read rhythms on numbers, like some schools do 1 and 2 and.
I do that, yes.
So then they have to get those numbers.
And
it's also, you can't, some people do, but you can't distinguish a major 3 versus a minor 3 or any of the accidentals unless you add something else. But yeah, so there are, there's some advantages, and it is easier in the beginning to do numbers.
Yeah. But it's helped their tuning and
Right.
It's helped their overall sound. So
Yes.
yeah.
I agree. I
bit the bullet
solfege too.
and did it.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for being on this podcast today, and I hope you have a great conference.
Thank you. You too. Thanks for asking me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Choir Conductor podcast. Please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and leave a review. Go to zackthompsonmusic.weebly.com for show notes, an archive of podcast episodes, and free compositions. Have a great week.